Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. I'm running out of ways to introduce spoiler videos for M15. I'm actually worried if I get any more hyped for the set, I'll just pass out on the spot. So without further ado, let's look at more cards from this chaotic psycho core set known as M15. We'll start today's video with the Chain Veil because why not? It's 4 mana for a legendary artifact, obviously. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. That's rude. Anyways, you can pay 4 mana, tap it, and for each planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn as though none of its abilities have been activated yet. How is this a real card? Let's assume you want to play this in Standard. The obvious synergy is to play Nissa once this is out, untap Forest, use this ability, and then untap more Forest, or make an Elemental while going up 2 loyalty at the same time. The cost is irrelevant to me. Wizards is breaking the rules of Planeswalkers by doing this. It's time to rant. The card is fundamentally broken, not because of power level, but because it challenges one of the only things we know to be true. You use 1 loyalty ability on a walker per turn. You just do. It's like putting on a seatbelt or using different knives for both peanut butter and jelly. By the way, if you use the same knife for both peanut butter and jelly, we can't be friends. Getting jelly in my peanut butter jar is basically treason. Anyways, don't get me wrong. I actually love this card to death. I'm just baffled they printed it. Think about its ability with New Ajani, or New Garrix, or Elspeth. There are 20 Planeswalkers in Standard for 2 months. You cannot tell me that people aren't going to try to put the veil on every single one of them. I don't even know if it'll work, but I'm sure all you guys who are making Super Friends decks are going to try your little hearts out. After all that's said and done, I just really hope I don't open this in draft. Next up, we have a new uncommon cycle of Paragons. I'm going to go through these really quickly. Each Paragon costs 3 colorless and 1 of its respective color. All of them are also 2/2s, and they give other creatures of their color that you control +1/+1. They also all each have an ability that targets another creature you control of their color for 1 mana. New Dawns grants Vigilance, Gathering Mist grants Flying, Open Graves, cool name, grants Death Touch, Fierce Defiance grants Haste, and Eternal Wilds grants Trample. Of these, I gotta say blue and black win out. Haste is cool, but Flying and Death Touch are both super scary to deal with. In Limited, all these will be good, but I'll be first picking Paragon of Gathering Mists all the time. Some of you have seen this card already, but others haven't, so here you go. In Garrix Wake is 7 colorless and 2 black for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures you don't control and all planeswalkers you don't control. I shouldn't have to mention how insanely flavorful this card is. In Garrix Wake, the name itself is terrifying. 9 mana isn't going to be something you aim for in Standard, but I don't really care. Destroy all creatures and walkers you don't control is hysterical, especially in multiplayer games. I suppose the only way to make someone hate you more is if you used Garrick's new ultimate on them. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Stain the Mind is 4 colorless and 1 black for a sorcery with Convoke. Name a non-land card. Search target player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. We did need a replacement for Slaughter Games. Sure, this version can be countered, but you can lower the cost by tapping creatures, and more importantly, it's just 1 black. This makes it so much more versatile. We have a ton of potential white, green, black decks coming post-rotation. It's important to have a versatile removal effect like this. Stain the Mind will see sideboard Standard play, especially once the meta settles down. Memoricide did it, Slaughter Games did it, it will always be a thing. There's just something I need to do really quickly. Let me just... Unlimited power! The first thing you need to know about Act on Impulse is that the art is insanely awesome. I can't wait to see it in foil. Seriously, just look how cool that is. Anyways, this is 2 colorless and 1 red for a sorcery. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you may play cards exiled this way. I'm having trouble deciding how I feel about this. My first instinct is to love it because it gives you access to 3 cards at once. The reservation I have is that it's a sorcery and costs 3 mana on its own. That's the hiccup I have, it's the 3 mana. Most red decks that want to use a card like this might run 20 land, maybe a few more. Even then, not having access to 3 mana when you need to cast up to 3 spells in one turn is rough. You do get to play a land if you exile it, so that's cool, but I'm just worried. I think the important thing to take out of this card is that the theme of red exiling cards as pseudo-draw effects is here to stay. Chandra does it, Prophetic Flamespeaker does it, there's a precedent being set here. The consensus seems to be that this is the direction red is heading. While I think that is super cool, it's going to make red mages care a lot more about their mana, and from my experience, they do not like to do that, so good luck. Since seeing the Kaboomist, a lot of you were talking about goblins possibly coming back. Well, you got your wish. Goblin Rabblemaster is 3 mana for a 2/2 Goblin Warrior. Other goblin creatures you control attack each turn if able. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste onto the battlefield. Whenever Goblin Rabblemaster attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. Heck yeah, goblins are back. I don't even play goblins. As a matter of fact, I don't even like goblins that much at all. They're messy, they blow things up, they get into all your stuff, but even I'm hyped for goblins to return. I should actually talk about the card itself. First of all, goblins being forced to attack each turn is a laughable drawback. The fact that they had to put that on a card is downright offensive. Goblins always attack. If they aren't attacking, it's because they're dead. It's how goblins work. Second, the Goblin Factory ability is disgusting across multiple formats. You don't even have to attack with this guy to get the trigger. Plus, if you guys met Siege Gang Commander, create Goblin, sack Goblin. Create Goblin, blow your face off. You get the picture. His last ability is just icing on top of an already delicious green-skinned cake. If you can give this guy haste in a tribal deck and your opponent can't deal with him immediately, it's just game over. One last thing I want to mention, if they're bringing back slivers and goblins, you best believe they're bringing back other tribes. We saw Kithkin last week. Just let that sit with you for a second. It's like hashtag tribes and cons 2014. Kurkesh Onakke Ancient is 2 colorless and 2 red for a 4/3 legendary creature ogre spirit. Whenever you activate an ability of an artifact, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 1 red. If you do, copy that ability and you may choose new targets for the copy. Right off the bat, you can only pay the additional cost once. You can't keep stacking it on. With that anti-fun sentence out of the way, let's talk hilarity. There are a million things you can do with this kind of ability. If you're playing Standard, the Chain Veil is pretty much the funniest thing ever with this, even though that interaction is stupidly unlikely to happen and may not quite work. We'll have to consult the Judge Brain Trust. Beyond that, we've seen that artifacts are going to be a thing, and I expect more to be revealed in M15 and especially in cons. Where this guy really shines for me personally is Commander. I'm sure you guys have seen Bosch Iron Golem artifact decks, right? They're actually quite popular. I can't see a reason why you wouldn't replace Bosch with Kurkesh. It opens up the entire strategy. Even something as simple as Steel Overseer becomes hysterical. Doubling up on your 1/1 counters every turn adds up quick. What about Strionic Resonator? You can copy the abilities that copies abilities and copy the original ability again. I feel like this is getting redundant, but you get my point. He's going to be sweet in Commander. This year's game day participation promo is the lovely Reclamation Sage. 2 colorless and 1 green for a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. This card is a bomb for Limited and Commander. First, it's an elf, so you can guarantee it'll see Commander play forever. Second, at least it has some power to it. Sure, 2/1 for 3 isn't great, but it'll probably take something down with it after it's done its real job. It'll probably see Standard play. You're talking about something that stays in play and removes an enchantment in a world where Constellation is sure to be a big deal. I'll never say no to a Naturalize on a body. The most important thing about this card is that it'll replace Harmonic Sliver in Legacy decks all over the place. The Sliver fills an important role in a variety of strategies. In some decks, Reclamation Sage is just strictly better. This is a pretty huge deal. This card in foil is going to be worth a little something. You know how those Legacy players like to spend a lot of money. I'm starting to think that it's actually impossible for there to be a day of spoilers where I don't see something playable in Standard in some form or another. What cards are you most excited about? I need to share this hype with you even more. Do you like the Chain Veil? The ability is nutballs. Anyway, remember to subscribe below for the latest and most reliable M15 spoiler information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Wow.